place is gorgeous. Look at this. Look at this golf course. Oh, what a gorgeous, gorgeous golf course. Man, I want to play a few holes. Even though I don't think I've played golf in 20 years, but just looking at this, I want to go play again, man. What a ripper golf course here in Bondi. What a beautiful Jewish community here, man. Some lovely city. Oh, mate, my lunch. Had late lunch at Pita Mix. I had the vegetarian burger, and it was so good. Oh, so there's Pita Mix. There's a series of kosher restaurants in Bondi. I'm walking along the core of the community right now, and the beach is about a kilometer to my left. So it's a really, not just a cohesive Australian community here, there's a cohesive Jewish community as well. The rabbis get along, like they work together. During the lockdown, they organized shofar blowing on Rosh Hashanah in the park, so to reduce risk of COVID. So the Sydney rabbis, emphasize that the law of the land is the law of the Jew. Talmudic dictate still applies in 2021. So you do the shofar blowing in the park for 10 minutes, then everyone goes home. Social distances. So very little spread of COVID in the Australian community and the Jewish community. Now, in Sydney, there was a fringe of a fringe group that disregarded lockdown rules. I think they got fined about 5,500 Australian each, disregarding the rules. That's very rare in the Jewish community, and not how things are done here in Sydney. They by the book, obey the law of the land, observe the lockdown, and it's just a wonderful thing to see how cohesive the Sydney Jewish community was, and not just with reaction to COVID, but in general. It's about as scandal-free a community as you'll find. Like, rabbis don't allow their egos to get in the way, and working with other rabbis. So all the rabbis here, they work together to build a safe, cohesive community. And maybe the relaxed Australian attitude also affects the Jewish community, so there's not a lot of feuding here in Sydney. Rival rabbis aren't going at it. So there's about 80%, as I understand it, of Sydney's Jews live in the eastern suburbs. So those are the poshest communities by the beach. They're children of Holocaust survivors from Central Eastern Europe, and a lot of South African Jews have moved here. So they tend to be entrepreneurial, highly accomplished, highly educated, law-abiding, and they contribute enormously to the tax base, because when they send their kids to private Jewish schools, they're still funding the public schools. So when you're a doctor, a lawyer, a dentist, accountant, an entrepreneur, you're paying a disproportionate amount of tax, and you're not using the social services nearly as much, because you send your kids to a private Jewish school, and the Jewish community takes care of its own. Right? So it provides jobs for people, helps people. And I love my first experience here in the Bondi Jewish community. Lunch with a friend, just went on a grand walkabout. And even though things are pretty chill, and don't notice any overt racial or religious hostility here in the eastern suburbs, still the security is excellent on top of things. No slackness there in the security. When I grew up a Seventh-day Adventist, and so we didn't have security. Right? We didn't have to have law enforcement showing up to our churches. And we didn't have to use metal detectors and background checks on people coming to church. But that's something I learned when I converted to Judaism, is a much greater threat, and as a result, the more measures you have to take to keep things safe. And these measures are just steadily escalating, particularly after the shooting in Pittsburgh. The synagogue left about 10 people dead, and then another shooting in Poway a year after that. So that then ripples out to have effects on the Jewish community worldwide. But what can we do instead of just relying on the kindness of strangers and relying on law enforcement? What can we do to look after ourselves? I just think that's such a healthy attitude. Every community should have that kind of mindset. What can we do to look after ourselves? What can we do to plug our weaknesses? What can we do to protect our community? What can we do to help our community? What can we do to revitalize our community? What can we do to help our community prosper? And if there are elements in the community that are causing trouble, what can we do to solve those problems? So Sydney's Jewish community is like a light unto the nations, right? Really impressed by everything I see in here. Australia's had pretty selective immigration, probably the sanest immigration policy of any of the Anglo nations. So overwhelmingly, people who immigrate here are educated, they have skills, they're entrepreneurial, they bring something to the table, and they, as a result, build a prosperous life here. And as a result of that, they pay a lot of tax, which then subsidizes social services for those who need them. So there are lots of Chabad, Lubavitch synagogues in Bondi, and then there's another Orthodox Jewish community up north. So this is the primary Sydney Jewish community along Old Southhead Road, which is where I'm walking now, inside the golf course. Love golf. Like, it attracts the best sort of people, man. People who play golf, they tend to be nice, they tend to be polite, they tend to follow the rules, they tend to be law-abiding, they tend to be ethical, they tend to hold themselves to account, they take cognizance of the effects of their choices on other people. Golfers are the best. And it's been a while since I've been out there golfing. Just a good type of people. Both attracts the best kind of people and then develops their character. Have your tefillin seen the light of day in Australia? Of course, mate. Got to get connected to that great power source, the Almighty. And that's the best power source. People like 40 desperately need a power greater than themselves, because my power is weak. My power shuts off way too often. I have to plug into the great power generator in the sky, creator of heaven and earth. So a lot of people in Sydney say, oh, the traffic is as bad as LA. Yeah, not quite. Not quite. This is like a peaceful country town. It is, I guess it's about 5 p.m. So I'm looking for the ocean. I want to take a pleasant ocean hike. perfect time of day to go to the ocean. So the temperature here is varied between about 60 degrees and 70 degrees. It's rained pretty much every day, only lightly. All right, here's a good sized intersection. So I think we're about a kilometer from the beach. Bondi Beach, right? Yeah, jacaranda in bloom. Good infrastructure for a Jewish community here, everything you need. It's like kosher stores, there are mikvahs, there are synagogues, there are schools. Now they even have their own live streamer. The only selfie stick I've seen in Australia, mate. Afraid of being antisocial, mate. Not very Aussie to walk around with a selfie stick. But Australians are pretty tolerant people. She'll be right, mate. It's kind of the Aussie ethos. Okay, here we go. No worries. So, when I was talking to Aussies in Los Angeles, they complained about how when they go to shul, they'd always get verbally abused. You know, wearing distinctive garb and wearing a yarmulke. But everyone I talk to here says that doesn't happen. So, talking to Jews here who never experienced being verbally abused, being Jewish, and haven't encountered, visceral anti-Jewish hatred. So, by and large, Jews and Muslims live in different parts of Sydney. So the Muslims live more in the western suburbs, where the real estate is cheaper. The Jews live in the eastern suburbs, where the real estate is more expensive. A lot of roundabouts. There are a lot more roundabouts than traffic lights. So I think America is going to start using roundabouts. There's a big article in the New York Times about one mayor. I think he'd been to Europe and he saw all the roundabouts. And he thought, good idea. So apparently roundabouts reduce dangerous collisions. Oh, yeah, mate? We're on the way to the beach. So, in dealing with Australian bureaucracy, and it's very particular, so it can be a bit of a pain to get your Medicare sorted out. Roundabouts are the commies. And your tax file number, they can start working. Didn't bring enough documents. I only had 2 documents. They wouldn't accept documents on my phone. Had to be hard copies. So get a tax file number at the Australian Post Office. But once you're in, mate. A little bit like Orthodox Judaism. Not easy to break into as an outsider, right? Bit of a test when you convert. Bit of a challenge to assimilate in your community. But once you're in, mate, and you're amongst family. Okay, my sister was right, I should have worn a hat. A lot of sun out today. Didn't slap on enough sunscreen. look out for your mates and your mates look out for you. Yeah, that's the Aussie ethos, mate. So what's the saying? Slip on a shirt, slap on a hat, slop on some sunscreen. Slip, slop, slip, slap, slop. That's the Aussie public service announcements to reduce skin cancer. That's with the glasses. I like to be able to see clearly, mate. So much gorgeous scenery here. The birds are amazing. Someone heard some kookaburras the other day, felt right at home. I'm not a vain man, mate. Oops, I think I can run. Okay, here we go.
Is there any change in the rate?
Just gonna look for the flag. Wow, this whole neighborhood's happening, mate. Just bursting with life and vitality. Just getting back to it after lockdown ended about 5 weeks ago. So crowds are returning. I believe we're going to have full crowds at the Test cricket matches, the Ashes against England. So tons of cafes and coffee houses, a new thing in Australia the last couple of decades. Less beer drinking, more wine drinking, more coffee drinking. So the Sydney Jewish community definitely punches above its weight, like very successful, hardworking, accomplished, educated, influential, deeply Zionist, committed to Israel. Fund a lot of institutes, think tanks, like the Lowy Institute. Is that the Lowy Institute the #1 institute in Australia, mate? Oh, Sheila's. Everyone in eastern suburbs seems so fit. So I saw on the news that Australians had become as fat as Americans. I don't see that in the eastern suburbs. I haven't seen one fat person in the eastern suburbs. Everyone's fit. Like you come out to the beach 5, 6 a.m. Everyone's out jogging, young, old, men, women. Out getting fit. I don't see one fat person in the eastern suburbs, mate. Like I thought Australia had become a nation of fatties. And I'm not seeing it here on the eastern suburbs. So it's also true with like West LA, you don't see many fat people too. So this feels like West LA, except without the crime, without the homelessness, without the graffiti, without general antisocial behavior, without loud music booming out of cars, without gangs disrupting shopping centers,